Alright, so we're gonna do some loops now. I've gone ahead and set up a public class named loops and put a main method in there so we can run our loops. And we'll see the output down here in the interactions pane. So basically what a loop does is it loops through a series of numbers, anything that you really want to loop through. You can set up a loop for that. So we're gonna play with just manipulating an integer variable with a for loop and a while loop. So we're gonna go ahead and set up this variable. We'll call it int variable, and we'll say that equals 0 to start with. So for a for loop, you say for, and we're going to cycle through based off of a count. So we're going to set up a new int, we'll call it I, and we'll start at 0. We'll continue until I is less than 10, so we'll loop through 10 times. And then every time we loop through, we want to increment I, so we're going to use I++, and that's going to increment I every time this loop is run through. So the loop body is going to be inside of these curly braces, and basically what we'll do is we'll increment variable just like we incremented I. So as I goes up, variable should go up. So we'll do variable plus plus, and so that we can see what's happening, we'll print it out. We'll print out variable. So let's compile that, and so every time this loop is run through, variable should be incremented. So when I equals 0, it will increment variable. When I equals 1, it will increment plus 1, and so on. So let's see. There. So just so we can be sure, let's write variable like that, and it'll tell us what our variable is. Variable is 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10, because we cycled from 0 to 9. Which gives us 10 total cycles. So we can also use I, the integer I that we created in our for loop. So let's make a new variable. We'll call it variable 1, and we'll set that. We won't set it equal to anything right now. Now in the loop, we can say variable 1 equals I. So now as we run through, variable 1 is going to start out at 0, and then it'll output it, and we'll set it in our output here, and then it'll equal 1, 2, 3, all the way up to, in this case, 9, because we're starting at 0 and we're going through these 10 iterations. So let's go ahead and add variable 2 in here. So we'll say variable 1 plus variable 1. So let's run it here, and we get, I like the way it looks, so let's make it nice. There we go. Variable 1, or variable is 1, variable 1 is 0. So variable started out as 0. At I equals 0, variable plus plus, so that means variable is going to equal 1, and then variable 1 is going to equal whatever I happens to be. Now if we want to make them the same, we just manipulate I right here. We can add 1 to it, and there we go. We can also add 300, and it'll be just fine. Yeah, so that's basically a basic for loop running through off of a count, an I count. we'll go over other and maybe an enhanced for loop to run through some other things as soon as we get some more going. But now what I'm going to show you is a while loop. So I'm going to write the equivalent version of this for loop in the form of a while loop. So basically what a while loop is while something is true or false, depending on how you set it up, it will continue to loop through until that stopping condition is met. So I can show you a couple different versions here. So we'll say while. In this case, for this for loop, we're going to 10. So while, we'll base it off of variable. While variable does not equal 10, let's make our curly braces for the loop body. We'll say variable plus plus. And we'll copy this again. But I don't want those guys yet. There. So now this isn't going to be this isn't really going to do anything yet. See, it's still output just everything from our for loop. Now what's happening is variable has already been incremented to 10 in our for loop, so when we come down to the while loop, variable already equals 10, so it's not going to go through the while loop. So we could either change the while loop here, while variable is not equal to 20, and it'll go through and it'll increment variable up to 20, or we can just reset variable to 0, and then it'll be the equivalent of our for loop. You can see there, it's counting through. So now if we want to add variable 1, now our while loop's not based off of the same format of count as our, well, it's not based off count at all as our for loop. So we don't have this variable I. So if I compile, it's going to ask me where's I, because I is instantiated inside of the for loop. So if I want to use an I for, or not for, but just create an I, and we'll set that equal to 0 out here. Variable 1 equals I, and so now that's just going to stay the same. Oops, I have to add this here. So now variable 1 is going to be output is 0 the whole time. Actually, let's do this real quick just to show you something. It's going to be 0 the whole time. But if we say I plus plus, that should increment it. However, every time this while loop is run through, we're going to set I back equal to 0. So, and then it's going to increment I. So I is always going to be 1. See that? Now, I mean, we could say I plus plus again, and it would increment it twice before the loop is reset. But it's always going to reset to 0 and then do the same thing. So we want to make sure we declare our I outside, or our, yeah, in this case, this I outside of the while loop, so it doesn't reset it. Now if we leave the double increment there, it's going to go up by 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, all, so on. But if we want to make it equivalent to our for loop, just run it like that, and we have the same thing. Actually, I deleted the plus 1 up here, so now it should be the same thing. There we go. See that? So that's a basic run through of for loop and while loop, and as you keep exploring more things, you can really use these. They're really powerful tools, and you can use them to do a lot.